I don't know if cock blocked would be the right word there for sapphic
Right.
love.
That's what I was going to say. I love, David, that you and I were thinking the same exact thing.
Lords and ladies, good wives and good men, I welcome you to Vassals of Kingsgrave podcast with another episode of Blackfyre Backchat, continuing with our House of the Dragon Season 2 coverage. This week, we're talking Season 2, Episode 6, Smallfolk. And the only news that I have to bring before the council this week is we have another in our ranks. They may appear a little later on. I have named a sworn sword, mine own bleached white cloak, Sir Kevin. And then with me as well today, I have my lord's hand, Hannah. And then I also have my Grand Maester, Bina.
Hey everyone, Bina 007 at your service.
My Master of Laws, Steph.
Hello.
And my Master of Coin, David.
Hey there, it's David HHH on whatever.
And with introductions out of the way, I am the Lord Baron, your host for the evening. So this week with Lemon Cakes, I kind of think it's more like 3.75 for me. I wanted to squeak a 4, but I didn't have it in me. What about you guys?
I'll give it a 4. I liked it. I liked the dragon stuff. I know there's going to be some talk, I'm sure, on it, but I liked it. I liked what's going on. I even liked our dreamy flashbacks, sort of. I liked that and hoping that that's going to be the end of it, but
Yeah, I'd give it a 3.5. There's some good forward momentum. I feel like there was I think I like how they did the Dragon Seed rollout with Sir Stefan Darklin.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that Damon's plotline this episode was in the previous episode, but I guess we'll get into specifics later.
All right, and it looks like Hannah says for her it was about half 4.7, another half about 2.5. Feels like it's another filler episode, so maybe an average about 3. I could see that.
Yeah, it's Bina here, and I agree with Hannah. I think I was a 3 last week, so maybe about the same. I did like some of the stuff that echoes Game of Thrones with the Greens going to church, but still derping around in Harrenhal. So
yep.
we're gonna keep it in the 3s, I think, for me.
All right, and then with that, we open into the episode proper with the Lannister troops approaching the Gold Tooth, which we got a really sweet shot of the castle. And then instead of marching straight to Harrenhal, they want to send a raven to request Aemon to join them with Vhagar, and they had a really cool lion mascot.
Yes, I liked how also first great presence of Jason Lannister. His smugness was sorely missed, but I liked how it's just demonstrating that now every foot army just doesn't want to go into battle without air cover, unsurprisingly.
It's very sensible.
Yes, and I liked his whole Knights of Summer energy, even considering his refusal to go into battle without air cover. It's very with his lion that he brought along, and yeah, you get the feeling that he really just is looking to just put in the requisite amount of like the bare minimum to not get or to not draw suspicion about himself for treason, like with Lord Baratheon later. But he's just not that. And also, glad they gave us the golden tooth. I don't think we've ever seen that on the show. And the here they've also mentioned Dalton Greyjoy this episode, so at least let's hope that they can at least tell us through exposition about his raiding of the Westerlands later.
I just want to give a shout out to the actor playing Aemond. I really love what he's doing with his character, just so much more compelling than in the books. I loved his, like at the Small Council, it did have a kind of, who are you going to call, Ghostbusters aspect to it. And he's just like, really? Again? You can't handle this energy to him. There's a really good interview with him on the Vanity Fair podcast, still watching this week, where he talks about how he has been inspired by Tony Soprano, which I found really fascinating. So I really find his scenes for me are now the highlight of these episodes in this season, which is surprising because I feel maybe Daemon is meant to be that, given the casting and who that character is, but it's totally Aemond now. For me, anyway.
Oh yeah, he's big anime villain, hamming it up everywhere. Love it.
And with the mention of Daemon, we swiftly cut to the Green Council, where Aemond is crumpling the letter, incredulous that he would be summoned as he is the Prince Regent. He then commands the Lannisters to march to Harrenhal and says that they will ally with the Triarchy to break the blockade, since the Greyjoys have not been responding to any correspondence. Aemon commands Crispy to march to Harrenhal, forcing Daemon to be harried on two sides, and Aemon will fly to join them at the right time. The council is dismissed, and Aemon has a private word with his mother, the Dowager Queen. He dismisses her from her seat on council, and they have a somewhat touching moment as he takes his leave, giving her the crown's gratitude. And yeah, now that you say he's kind of getting inspired by Tony Soprano, I definitely see that with the family dynamics.
I'm not sure I'd call it a touching moment. I mean, it seemed kind of bitchy to me,
I said somewhat touching, and she touched his cheek.
I guess.
Yeah, this is the moment of or one thing is I had expected that Otto had already sent those letters to the Triarchy because
Yeah.
it's like that's what he does in the book before he gets sent to, or before he gets fired by Aegon. But also because that is his entire that's the entire project he was working on that wasn't bearing fruit immediately, which is what pissed Aegon off. So it seems a little haphazard for them to follow the book and have him get fired by Aegon, and then for them to ask him back, although who knows whether he will come back to King's Landing. Because at the same time, it is odd that in the book he's still hanging around King's Landing until Rhaenyra takes it to chop his head off. So, also, as far as the moment with Alicent goes, it's touching, but then it's also, for her entire performance this episode, it's always the question of, is she actually trying to turn a new leaf and reach out to her children, or is this just so self-interested that she's only trying the compassion tactic once they're getting in the way of something she wants, and just bearing the consequences of the fact that she only gave a damn about her kids insofar as it fueled her persecution complex with regards to Rhaenyra? Because it seems like Alicent is never, or she thought Aemond was a nuisance before he got his dragon, and like she had her big scene at Driftmark, but then, yeah, you get the sense that she hasn't really bothered with him since, except to just judge him from afar, until now. So
I agree with that, and I think there were so many questions about parenting that I've been thinking about recently with in relation to the British royal family. But I think this idea of neglecting or being perceived to neglect your spare and the resentment that causes in the heir is very much at play in this season. And Alicent and Rhaenyra, are they good parents? Probably not. This concern with this other son that we suddenly realize exists was just, is it cynical? Like, my two other sons have now rejected me, so let me now think of my next son. It just all felt very convenient, I guess.
well, at least Daron isn't going to write a tell-all.
Or appear on Oprah, thank God. But yeah, I mean, public service announcement from VOK. If you happen to be a monarch, maybe pay some attention to the second and third kids, because A, you might need them, and even if you don't, just don't store up Oedipal bullshit for the future.
And then across the bay on Dragonstone, Corlys is at the council table as he dons his handpin moments before Rhaenyra and the counselors arrive. Sir Stephen Darkland is brought before the council, and Rhaenyra asks if he would mayhaps like to try and claim a dragon due to his grandmother's grandmother being a Targaryen princess. He accepts, knowing it may also mean death, as leal and true as a knight of the Kingsguard can be. Which I do have to say, I do like the humbleness of Rhaenyra thing that, I'm not forcing you to do this. Like, I'm offering it to you, but you don't have to.
I liked that too. I liked that the entire way they presented it, of just because this is the biggest unforced error on Team Black, right? Of giving these dragons to untrustworthy people. But it shows that at the beginning they at least tried to do it in a reasonable way. Because Sir Stefan Darkland is as good as it gets, right? Like, he has tangential dragon blood, but his loyalty cannot be gainsaid, right? He's the one who took the crown and gave it to Rhaenyra. He's on the Kingsguard. He's there when he doesn't have to be. His whole he's got to be over 40, right? So it's just his personality of having grown up in or having spent his entire adult life in the Kingsguard is probably very set, and he's not bitter like Crispy, so less likely to get ideas about things.
And also, Darkland may be as good as it gets, but not to a certain dragon.
Right.
From there on, we get Dun Dun Dun, Daemon Dreams. Although this one is a little more heartbreaking, as he relives the moment between himself and Viserys about the heir for a day. Viserys seems to grow tired and weak, and Daemon cannot open the doors as he yells for them, as if his words alone could asunder them. The doors relinquish as Daemon falls into Sir Strong's arms, accusing him of these waking nightmares he endures. Daemon, in his paranoia, says the king is on guard, and to stop watching him. So we do get more Daemon Dreams in this episode.
Yep.
I liked it. This is the good stuff. They're finally just bringing it to what it's all about, Viserys.
Right.
Sad that Rhea Royce couldn't have come to read him for filth, though. But yeah, I liked how they had they brought Patty back to and also to they replayed the lines, but now it's just sadder. So it's for on both of their performances. So it's about what they were actually feeling instead of all the bluster, which is very poignant.
Yeah, this was finally a dream I didn't mind. But I do question do we really know more about Damon's state of mind now than 3 episodes ago? Like, could we have done these dreams in a more concise manner? Yes. I think you could have had a little. I was thinking about when Danny goes to Karth and the House of the Undying. I think you could have had one grandiose gothic hallucination that had little baby Rhaenyra and Viserys and brought together all the strands you needed to have to get us into Damon's state of mind without revisiting every single episode. So I'm not going to do a full-on Damon rant. Apologies, Pops, because I did like the dreams this time, but I just feel it's been clumsily handled. But this is the best of it from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, this is the best. And I feel like after this week, we're ready to move on. Let's just hope the producers and writers are.
Mate, I was ready to move on last week and the week
I know,
before.
But at least they saved the best scene for last. Hopefully last.
And as if they sensed our wanting to leave these dreams, he then runs from Harrenhal and into the remains of what was the Godswood, where Alice Rivers antagonizes him. She further opens up to him of his failures and his fears, telling him he is no more than a piece on the board. Alice further prods him about a crown and if it should fall to those who do not want it. Damon asks for counsel and Alice says to do nothing, for the winds will shift in a few days. The spooky witch also has a cute little owl that comes to her before she exits.
Oh, just one last thing about the scene with Sir Simon Strong. I really liked Damon's face acting as he was pulling the knife on him, just because, it really did sell that he was at the end of his rope. And I'm not that familiar with Matt Smith's body of work, so besides this show, I don't really have much to go on for how good of an actor he is.
He was great on Doctor Who.
And Sir Simon Strong, like stressing him like a little baby too.
Yep, our dream couple.
That's my new ship.
Yeah, with Alice Rivers, anything is just all very inscrutable, so it's hard to say one way or another when you don't really know what her endgame is, besides having a dragon baby to do all sorts of magics with that we don't have the rest of the story on as the Witch Queen of Harrenhal. But I guess it's useful to later reconciling with Rhaenyra for him to admit that, or just to at least vocalize that I cannot do everything by myself, but I think this could have been handled more elegantly.
Yeah, I agree, because I think I'm kind of agreeing with Elle's comment last week too, that I'm kind of getting sick of Alice Rivers just because, yeah, like you said, we don't have the end to her story. We don't know really what she's doing besides the one motivation.
I mean, I like how here they set up like, what does she know? What does she know? And then we later find out, oh, she's actually making this happen, or we think at least that's what's strongly implied. Or she's somehow involved in a certain murder. So she goes from being like, just spooky and knows something to, is she part of it? Did she make this happen, or did she do it herself, or who knows? But
yeah, then also there's in the book, Aemond says that, like she has the power to see visions in various natural phenomena. So she could see visions in clouds when riding on Vhagar with Aemond, or she could see visions in the flames.
So then, moving on from Harrenhal, we are back at Dragonstone, where Darkland puts on a smoke show. That's my summary.
I liked it.
I was to say half of the making of episodes, and both the inside and the separate show they have, focus mostly on the fire in this scene. Like that was obviously the big expensive part of the scene, and probably the best scene in the episode so far. So
I liked it. I think it really showed how dangerous they can be, because we've only seen Aemond claiming Vhagar, right? And that went pretty well for him. So, I mean, yeah, it was scary when Vhagar took off like that, but this I think adds a lot of needed context for, since they haven't gone here yet, of just how dangerous it is to claim a dragon, and just like how at some point reckless it can make Rhaena seem to have tried so many times to claim a dragon.
It also points out how unknowable a dragon is. Like, we can't really know what they're thinking. Like, we don't really know why he rejects him. Is it just because he was scared? I mean, who wouldn't be scared? You know?
Well, I mean, too, it almost comes off like, if you've ever been petting a cat and they're loving it, like licking on you, and then all of a sudden they bite and attack. It's almost like the will of a beast is so unknowable.
Right.
I also do love the touch of what do they call them? The wise, the dragon keeper people, the one
Yeah,
that
the
gets
dragon
burned.
keepers.
I love that their thing is like, all right, so you might end up getting burned on the job. If you do, just grab your dagger, cut your throat, and you did your service. Thank you.
There you go. It's like, once you're on fire, I mean, there isn't going to be much left for you, so you might as well just end it, right? I mean, as we see from a certain king.
But all jokes aside, it was beautifully done with the Valyrian singing and the budget they put into the dragons this season and this episode especially. Well worth it, I think.
One thing I was going to say first, though, it is important to recognize that all of that fire, the people on fire, the fire they created from the dragon, was practical effects, and that none of it was CGI. I mean, they might have enhanced it with CGI, but they made a big deal of pointing out how they did it and all that. So they're very proud of it, and rightly so. It was awesome.
Absolutely agreed. And then after that, we find ourselves on Driftmark, where Corlys appoints Alan to be his first mate. And as Alan is most reluctant, he asks if it's an order or a request. And Corlys says he expects him to report for his duty tomorrow. I got the brothers' names, right?
Yes, Alan is the sailor
The
and
older
Adam
one?
is the dragon
Yeah.
rider.
Okay, cool. The whole time I'm writing my notes, I'm like, I'm just going to assume I'm right. And if I'm wrong, whatever.
I mean, look, I get half of the things wrong when quoting what happens in Fire and Blood, so shocking lack of knowledge is kind of our thing.
Always on brand.
Well, it's not like George made these names easily, recognizable and discernible from each other when they all sound the same. They used to have a lot of the same letters. Like, I mean, I don't think I would call this lack of knowledge shocking if you got it wrong, especially since they haven't really appeared much on screen till now. So
I think they've sufficiently built up the two of them enough for what we need them for.
Yeah, it seems like Corlys wants more to do with Alan right now, and he's just barely acknowledged Adam at all.
Yeah, which is something we find later, and that's harsh.
It's a bit like our discussion last week about disposable cousins that I think didn't make the edit, but it's very similar, isn't it? We have disposable sons who you conveniently discover when you need them.
Yep. All right, and then over in King's Landing, we're in a wine sink where Ulf is given what passes for soup nowadays in the shadows of the Red Keep. And the brothel owner, who we've seen before, clearly but not loudly, speaks of how her girls were taken to the Red Keep and attended a feast by order of the Prince Regent. Ulf doesn't deny that King Viserys loved his feasts and dances, but not when the small folk had not. When the brothel owner says that he is gone, she suggests the rightful queen was denied her seat. And I do like this scene a lot, because I think this and the later Hugh Hammer scene we get, it really helps to show where the small folk are at and keeping tabs on our potential dragon seeds, obviously. But it is really well done.
right. I mean, it's almost as if the small folk are going to become important in this story at some point.
My only criticism, the small folk do sound quite posh though, don't they? And I think that there's a long and grand and noble tradition of British themed TV where the small folk all sound like Dick Van Dyke doing Cockney accents. Cool blimey, Governor, strike a light. And that's what I want from my small folk. There was some very kind of eloquent and articulate disputation going on with the small folk. They all sounded like they'd been educated to a very high level. And I found this to be implausible.
I have to imagine that's because the other accents of what is IRL British Isles are reserved for like the Yorkshire accent is the north. Like Cockney accent is more like flea bottom. I'm not sure that's exactly where we were meant to be necessarily. I think for me, it seemed to me the point was that even if you're not in flea bottom, lowest of low ending, then you're being affected similarly. Like the flea bottom has come to you because all reserves are going to feed the dragons and this war effort.
Yeah, it came off as kind of, I don't know, it sounded really like fake to me, even as like we know that the madam is in on the whatever, or is in on the scheme of Massaria to really sow this discontent. It all felt very cheesy in the delivery.
It almost seems like it was supposed to be a bit hammy.
Yeah.
Especially if you remember that, like, last time we saw the madam, she pretty much just got insulted by Aemond in front of the king and the king's guard and all her patrons and everything. So,
Oh, absolutely. I believe that she's in on it, or that she has a reason, enough motive to be in on it. But
right, I mean, the White Worm, we know the White Worm has her whispers in King's Landing, so I do like that. In terms of at least a TV show, it's giving us all these characters that we're already relatively familiar with to show kind of the bigger support that is actually in the Smallfolk. All right, and then moving on to Dragonstone again, Rhaenyra is followed by a panicked and unhappy Lord Bartimos, where she grows tired of his lashing tongue and slaps him, remarking it is her fault that he does not fear her. There's a little short scene until the next one. Any words on that little bit?
I liked it. I liked it as a nice character moment for Rhaenyra. Good to build that cruel streak. I forget what he was asking her about besides, or because I watched it yesterday, but
He's basically not necessarily scolding, but he's like complaining about, like, I can't believe this happened. Think of what people are thinking. Sir Darkland was the best of the best. And if you remember, I said no, that we shouldn't do this, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, and that's when she slapped him. And rightfully so,
right.
I think. Because, yeah, that is quite a tongue to speak to your regent to. But I agree. I think it is the first moment we really see a snap in her. Like, we've seen her yell and we've seen her make bad decisions, but she's never physically enacted on her dragon's blood, essentially. Okay, and then after she leaves Sir Bartimos, she is in her chambers where she is picking up and feeling the weight of a steel sword in her hand as Mytheria comes in to deliver the news that the small folk are listening to the whispers of how good Queen Rhaenyra is. And then she compliments that Rhaenyra looks good with the sword. Another kind of just tangential scene following the last one that really leads into the big scene with the two of them later.
Right.
I do agree, though. I mean, haven't all of us been wanting Rhaenyra with a sword and some armor this entire time?
Of course we have. We'd love to see it, but of course that's her struggle all along, is that she wants to see it too, and she can't. She's not allowed to.
Henry, you want to talk about that bitch slap a little more?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Seth. I just when Rhaenyra finally turns around and slaps that guy who's been undermining her the entire that, I like I hurt my mouth. Yeah, girl, like you just got out bitched, bitch. And then later when
Right.
she's like, he's lucky I didn't have his tongue, you know. But I really love the
Right.
line and the way she delivers it, you know. I think it's my fault, my lord, that, you know, you have not learned to fear me.
You're not
I
right.
really feel like that says more than any threat she could have made, and really does speak to
Right.
the character of her. You know, I know Viserys didn't necessarily pick her for the reasons, but as he says, like back on the hunt before Aegon is born, like, you know, I didn't just pick her willy nilly, and I'm not going to put her aside for a son. She does have all the quality, good rules. She knows when to tell all and to tie. You know, it's not like the plot in what is it, The Last Jedi, where by then it's like, why didn't you just say the fucking plans you were doing? You know, why does it have to be all this cloak and dagger? She understands that balance, and she does treat her people well. She does listen, but when she's listened too much, she recognizes, okay, I had to tighten the leash on these people. You're not going to rule me. I rule, and you help me, help me rule me, and giving counsel, not undermining me at every turn. And I just, that, if, you know, what was it, like 10 seconds of show, me was one of the, like, 4.9 moments in this.
Also, it's like, that was Lord Celtigar, wasn't it?
No, later in the episode, Jake says that it's Lord Bartimos.
Right, but is that his first name or his house? Like some
Oh,
minor
I have
house in
no
the
idea.
Crown Lands. Okay.
I
I,
honestly don't know.
I think you're right, Steph, but I'll look it up really quick.
Right, because also if that was Lord Celtigar, because, you know, it's like funny to, you know, like see more of House Celtigar since they're kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Valyrian houses, but also it's just like, well, you know, like you're not necessarily descended from the Dragon Lords of Old Valyria, but then like if you wanted to bitch about how unqualified Stefan was, then maybe you could try to claim Sea Smoke.
All right.
Back in King's Landing, no food is to be had anywhere. Ulf is seen shouting for meat as we transition into the Green Council. Larys the Clubfoot and Aemon discuss the current standings when Aemon punches down and says, "Like, I want you to call my grandpa for hand, idiot." He then chastises the Grand Maester for being late, but it seems that the king is stabilizing in his condition.
The look on Larys's face there, like, was so good. Like, oh fuck, I thought I had it. He so thought he had it. His scheming had paid off, and then oh fuck,
It was
I'm
a
not as
chef's
clever,
kiss. It was so beautiful.
right?
And this is why
Right?
you have to be partly Team Eamon, because he's a little shitbag, but the way he played Larys was just so beautiful. And he's not stupid. Calling back Otto is not stupid. Saying to
Right.
his mum, you have no real role once Otto's back, is not stupid. I mean, maybe can we think of a time where Eamon would have actually just been an effective ruler? I don't know, but I'm entertaining the thought. That's what I'm going to say.
And no, it's also that Aemon, I think, recognizes that Otto is covering, or it has qualities that Aemon himself lacks, right? He's the warrior, dragon rider prince. And, you know, he knows that I think he needs someone else to, you know, like handle these noble relationships beyond ordering House Lannister to battle. And that he has all of that institutional knowledge too of how things are normally go, what favors are there to trade.
As admittedly does the person he just dismissed from his council. But
True, but you know, she's a woman and
She's a lady.
of course,
and she's his abusive mom besides, you know, like it is nice to see obviously untrustworthy person be treated as such in these types of shows, because usually they're just there to have this neener look on their face while everyone perfectly trusts them, right?
Right.
And Alicent is in too deep to give him any kind of meaningful consequence, but not Aemond.
From there, Aemond goes to see his brother alone, and he threateningly interrogates Aegon on what he remembers. When the Grand Maester comes in, he's surprised to see the Prince Regent, and Aemond tells him his brother's recovery will be a long journey, and see that he rests comfortably. Aegon peels the council marble off his bandages. Which just, we go from a scene where we're like, oh yeah, Aemon's actually got his shit together, to him physically threatening his brother.
Well, that's part of how he has his shit together, right?
Right, exactly. Give him the silk glove when they need, give him the gauntlet when they need.
He woke up, okay, first person there before he can tell anybody what happened. And
Right.
Aegon.
And what do you remember
on the
anyways?
I remember nothing.
That's what I thought.
He was, I guess there's been some chatter about whether the Aegon's I remember nothing was like built correctly, but I didn't have a problem with it. I would need to rewatch to look at Tom Glencarney's facial expressions, but from the way he spoke the line, it 100% came out to me as I already know, or I remember what happened, but I know this is what I'm expected to say if I want to live.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would think so, but it's hard to say, which was, I think, the point.
Well, it's also like, it's also, the tragic irony of, Alicent screaming at him in young teenage Aegon in season 1 about how Rhaenyra's definitely going to kill him, but then, set up this family dynamic where it's not Rhaenyra that Aegon immediately has to worry about.
Yeah, most likely he does remember, because I mean, you could say, well, like, it hit his head, has a concussion, and like yes, there's equal chance of that, but it sort of reminds me of when you watch like 9/11 documentaries, people that the building, like, basically the building came down on them, or very much around them, and it all went black and stuff, and they don't remember much after that. You hear a lot of that, but they do remember, like, up until that point. They remember the roar and the fire and the heat, and so I have to imagine crashing on Dragonback of Flame would be similar in that experience of just colossus of it.
Yeah, it's funny, until you started saying that, if our listeners don't know, it's not a big deal, I'm fine. But I almost died earlier this year, and I was in a coma for 7 days as the gods demanded. But I remember everything up until the moment, and then when I, came to consciousness later. So I can see that now.
Well, hello. I'll jump in and just say it's hard to predict neurological stuff like that, though. I mean, especially when you talk about the kind of trauma that Aegon had. I mean, he genuinely could not remember the whole day before.
Also agreed. And everybody, welcome my sworn sword, Kevin.
Hey.
What's up?
Hey, Kevin.
Kevin, Uncle Kevin.
Miss you, buddy.
Whatever I am. Good to see.
Yeah.
Good to talk to everyone. It's been a minute.
Yeah. Welcome back.
And also, so I'm not hungover. I'm having like an emergency dental thing going on, so I can barely like open my jaw. But I
That's
love you.
awful. Also, I would never judge you for being hungover. So, I hope you feel better.
To your point, Kevin, yeah, he was also just drunk as a skunk when he took off from King's Landing, and that was
True.
But he also told Aemon that he didn't remember anything, and he could know that he needs to say that for his own safety because he's very scared of Aemon. And he, later he
Rightfully
tells,
so.
later he makes it pretty clear he needs help and he's scared of him. So
Yeah, going back to Bina's thing of like Tony Soprano, it is very much like, are we going to have a problem here? Intimidation, tactic, and regardless of what Aegon does remember, it's obviously that's what Aemond is doing here. Like, one way or another, you ain't gonna remember, and you're not gonna have, your tongue wagging about it.
big ups to, by the way, to the showrunners who decided to get rid of Baby Maelor because they created a much better, in terms of a story, a better Aemon-Aegon dynamic, and that's one less preschool age or toddler age child that we have to see die on screen. So good decisions all around there.
Here, here.
Yeah, I kind of don't, just because I feel like what happens there on Bitterbridge is really crucial in bringing Otto back into play, and it sets things up for later. But if they're not gonna continue with like Aegon the Unlucky, Baylor, and they're not gonna go through like every single step there, then it is what it is. You got to make some sacrifices. It's definitely not as huge as leaving out like Lady Stoneheart, for example, but I know, and again, I don't want to see any kids getting killed, but I like it is a very crucial turning point in the dance.
yeah. I'm with you, Hannah. I don't relish the idea of seeing that kind of violence on screen, but it is indicative of how the people, or how like the general mood of the common people has been pushed at that point of the conflict, and also just demonstrating the impossible choices even random nobles have to make when faced with the dragon. Because after Maelor dies and the Greens come to sack Bitterbridge, the lady of the castle hangs herself because she knows she can't negotiate with Daron after what happened on her watch.
Exactly, and it's for Daron, with him being young, it's really telling. With how he ends up getting roped into family drama when he hasn't really necessarily been there the whole time, and there's just, I don't know, it's an omission that I'm bittersweet on for the show. And I was trying to explain it to one of my cousins. Her and her old man are unsullied, and they just had a baby, so they had a really hard time with blood and cheese. And I was like, well, it's actually better than in the book. And they're like, what? And I was trying to explain it to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think just from a cost benefit standpoint, though, I do feel like the points about nobles in impossible situations, as well as how the small folk are feeling, are both things they've hit really well. And there's a lot of other ways they've shown them in the show. So I don't know that we necessarily have to have another kid that young violently killed to prove the point. And I think we gain so much by Aemond being the direct heir in terms of the Greens rules. I think that gives us a lot for the story that is really worth it, in my opinion. But certainly that's an opinion, just my opinion.
So he is officially cut then.
I don't really know how they could introduce him now. Daron was had a reasonable other place to be. There's no real reason Maelor wouldn't have been at the Red Keep.
Yeah, unless they want to do a surprise pregnancy plotline with Helena, or they could pass it off as or they could really follow through on the Aemon Helena ship after not giving any material for it the entire season.
Yeah, that certainly would be interesting. But then at that point, he's still behind Aemon in the succession, which I
Right.
think is what's most important.
All right, and then before we move on to the Vale lands, Kevin, what lemon cake rating did you give this one?
I actually enjoyed this one a lot. Like, I, for the most part, have enjoyed the slower paced episodes. I mean, Brooks Rest was amazing, but the kind of the slower episodes have a lot of good character stuff in it. I'm gonna go 4.25. I'm actually, by the way, my birthday was yesterday, and one of my friends is bringing me lemon cake tomorrow.
There you
So,
go.
Yeah,
Tell him to bring 4.25 lemon cake.
yeah, I will have to. But yeah, that's I don't know. I don't need to go too deep into it. I like what happened at the Red Keep. You know, I really like Aemon pressing to be king more overtly. And I actually liked this round of Daemon hallucinations a lot more. I thought they made sense and probably should have been what we had last episode. Yeah, I think just in general, I like a lot of the beats this time around.
All right, hopefully when you're served your lemon cake, they don't bring Arbor Gold and lies. But going through the Vale lands, Rhaena is strolling with the young princeling, and she is talking on how her role is not exactly what she had in mind when she stumbles onto a herd of burnt sheep. And then back in the castle, she's informed that Prince Reggio will be happy to host both boys and herself. Rhaena confronts Lady Arryn that she was misled because there is a large dragon in the Vale. Now I have two notes here. One I wrote, I said, baby dragon in the room. Cute little leathery kitten, which I still agree.
Right.
But then I have one note here that is 2 asterisks, QL's bitching, 2 asterisks. Which, if she was here, maybe I can catch her and insert it here, but I'll let you guys start that off.
Man, pour one out for Nettles.
Yeah, it's looking like they're going exactly where we feared they were going with it. Let's just interchangeable black women.
Yeah, it's I really don't have like the articulation or education to word this how I word my displeasure with this, because I don't know, it's bad. It's just a bad choice. It's insulting to people who wrote the books. It's insulting to Martin's writing on the character. I guess for real estate of the storytelling it works, but other than that, I'm not a fan.
Agreed 100%.
Yeah.
I feel like you, and like Bina said last week, in 24, are you really gonna make that move? And we talked about this last week of like, yeah, they just so happen to make the Valerians, black, but that's not explicitly stated in the books, whereas Nettles' character is. And I guess one could make the argument that Nettles in and of herself is maybe tokenism, but I would tend to disagree with that politely, just because, of her history, where she comes from. That's not tokenism. And I feel like it does reflect a little more like real world of people being colonized by the British and not necessarily being like wholly welcome at court. Like, for example, that in the early episodes of The Crown, right, they go to visit Kenya and like Nairobi, and they're welcomed by one of the indigenous tribal leaders, and Prince Philip is like, "Oh, I like your hat," and then Claire Foy turns to him and is like, "That is not a hat, it's a crown, like, you dumbass," you know? Like, not all crowns are made of gold, and you need to give respect. But yeah, how in the hell would he know something like that? Because it's not exactly like they come to you in your court, you know? So I don't know. I'm rambling, but I could see, especially in this day and age where there is a lot of different discussions and opinion around represent what it should look like to be the most respectful. There are differences of opinion I've encountered, and I just think, yeah, like to have the erasure of this character though is pretty damning, and I hope that they are able to pull it out, you know, maybe amalgamize her in a different way with another character later. Maybe, you know, I'm kind of reserving hope, like limited hope about that, because I just think it's a huge mistake, and you know, they're not going to win people over.
I,
Fantasy is already a genre, is under scrutiny for lack of representation, right?
it's something I think about a lot, Hannah, because I think our own Discord, like our own community, probably isn't as diverse as it should be, or maybe it's just a mirror of how undiverse the fantasy community is.
Right.
And I think a lot about, you know, are we sending signals that we're not? I don't know. Like, you know, you can puzzle
Right.
over it. I think they had a chance here with the Nettles character to do something cool, like you know, retroactively making another family happen to be Black doesn't excuse it. And I wouldn't even mind, like, if they said they needed to condense because they were only being given 2 seasons, they were only greenlit for a certain amount of time by HBO to tell the story, I'd maybe swallow it. But the fact that we
Right.
have, and I will repeat, been tapping around Damon's gothic, you know, Tet dreams for like 5 episodes or whatever now.
Yeah.
They clearly have the time if they wanted to do it. They have the budget to do huge casts. I mean, you talked earlier, David, beautifully about how wonderful all the sort of the in-camera effects were rather than CGI. There's money in this show. There is time, maybe too much time. I would argue they've been given too much time. And so to not do this character, I feel, is, if we know that that's the case, it kind of feels like it's just not okay for me. And I think it sends signals about what's disposable and what isn't in the world of fantasy, which is, like you say, it's a genre that needs a little bit of help on this, and it's not getting it. It's such a missed chance. I'd love to know how much of the writers' room and the people behind the lens are diverse. I don't think this happens
Right.
in a diverse writing.
For me, it's very much like, you know, even if this wasn't like the only strong, explicitly Black female character in this world that we can recognize, let's say that wasn't the case. To me, it's still, from a storytelling standpoint, a big mistake. This is very shades of GOT. So you abandon Lady Stoneheart, okay, fine. I can make peace with that. But then you go out of your way to add in nonsense, made up things that are not at all in the books in Dorne, rather than sticking to that plot line. I don't get it. So this is very like, cool, you abandoned Maelor to save time. Great. And nobody else wants to see another young child killed. That's fine. But now you're going to abandon another storyline to, again, replace it with shit we don't really necessarily need. Why is that the case? These are the kinds of mistakes that made me furious with GOT, really, you know, kind of side eye this series going into it. And I really wish they would pull it and turn it around.
You know, right, and it's just it's like, yeah, you could, you know, like, reconfigure the plot so that, you know, like Rhaenyra's paranoia really goes into overdrive over something else. And yeah, like, but you know, it's with Nettles, it's everything. You know, it's that, you know, she's probably sleeping with Daemon. It's that she's, you know, a commoner who, you know, like tamed a wild dragon, and who else has done that? And that, like, she's willing to order the Lord of Maidenpool to break guest right to get rid of Nettles, right? It's just, and you know, like, she's a, like, Nettles is the only, or like one of the only characters on, or of the dragon seeds that actually, like, you know, like, yeah, she's foul-mouthed and body and everything, but you know, she absolutely, after the gullet, you know, like, she's distraught that she was party to killing so many people. And you know, it's just, it really does suck, because it seems like they're giving those aspects of her character to Sir Adam, and Adam is cool enough without those aspects of Nettles that he seems to be performing in the show.
I think it is important to recognize, though, that we don't always know the motivations why that writers and producers do the things they do. And when we assume something, that it's not always right. I mean, I think, like, I mean, I could easily see that this, I mean, the optics are still the optics and they should be aware of them. But at the same time, it feels more to me like, seems more to me like an issue of putting in the fake Arya role, where you're taking a minor character. And I mean, we can argue how minor she is, but taking a character
How
and
dare
replacing
you?
it, and replacing with someone who we know, or someone who's in this case more relevant to the family arc, because she's in the family. So I mean, that's I think where they were going with it is, let's give this job to someone who's in the family, who doesn't have as much to do otherwise. Like, take two characters and combine them, and that's something they did on Game of Thrones, and I think sometimes with good reason.
Right, but if they wanted to do that, I think the place to economize on those characters would have been between, or would be to cut off the Sot and to just make it one betrayer who walks off with Vermithor, the, you know, biggest of, you know, like, you know, who's a lot, or who's, you know, like, bigger than Caraxes, is just as battle tested as Caraxes, and the, you know, is the symbol of old King Jaehaerys, that's you know, that's very valuable as not just as a means to make war, but you know, a political symbol. They could have had Rhaena on Silverwing and kept Nettles.
It really does feel to me, and I'm sorry to say this, but it feels like we're still in 2024 with all the awareness of diversity and equity that we have. It's another turn with Hollywood of all Black characters are the same to you, you know, and I just don't like it. But I believe there's someone here to whisper in our ears with more with more accuracy and hopefully
There
a
we
very
go.
fiery opinion. Buckle up.
Hey guys, I was just with Smallfolk kind of getting wrapped. What do they think about it, and how they feel about DEI and all that good stuff? um, so, and this is probably the points that I have already been touched upon, I'm sure. Yeah, I really have strong feelings about it. Definitely, it's seeing that Raina scene with, you know, all the sheep, and, you know, hearing that, oh great, you know, there is a dragon in the veil, was pretty tough. And I think that just really going straight for the story, I think it really kind of dilutes the story in a lot of ways with them, if they decide to do this, take away Nettles completely and just kind of merge her story into Raina's. I think that's a huge loss for the story. I think it's a huge loss for how we examine and how George examines, the characters of the nuance and the complexity of the characters that we see and we see in Fire and Blood. So that is a big deal to me. Just putting aside the race in itself, of obviously that's important as well, but just putting that aside, I think it compromises, the story and the character arcs as a whole. I think it's a disservice to what we know from Fire and Blood about Rhaenyra and her turn. I think it also is a disservice to Damon's character as well, and how him and Nettles and that development with him in Maidenpool. I really just think that it's just we lose all of that subversion. We lose all of that for the benefit of oversimplification, because you can make these arguments about cutting certain characters. We don't have time, it just doesn't sit well, doesn't show well with TV. This is what we have to do. We have only 8 episodes to do this. So that can be made an argument, but again, like others had just mentioned when I came on, so many other things, extraneous things were done as well. So that really, to me personally, is not a really good rationale. I feel like that really does not hold a lot of water to me if that is the argument that is going to be made. And again, someone mentioned about, fantasy and how the perspective and the lens of fantasy writing and how much we don't see, especially regarding POC by POC characters. That having Nettles itself and how we know her in the story is an amazing subversion of fantasy tropes and standard fantasy tropes with characters. It's just the list really goes on, which kind of brings to me as well, like when people argue that she is not a necessary character and the story would be the same if it was without her. And to me, that just, we're getting a completely different story if we take away, all of that. Not to mention that she's in great foil for Rhaenyra, in Fire and Blood. I mean, there's this whole subversion of contrast of, Rhaenyra, purity versus, corruption, um, inherited power and success versus this self-made ingenuity. She's a common person, no dragon blood whatsoever, but with her ingenuity and her innovation, she was able to bring this dragon to heel. So what does that say about Targaryen exceptionalism and seeing them, above man and right below the gods? So even seeing them as gods, when a common brown girl can come in from nothing, from off of the streets, probably spread her skirt, spread her legs, and raise her skirt for a shepherd, to get these sheep, just to get these sheep to, coax um, sheep filler to like her and be used to her and accustom her to get her to ride, to become a dragon rider. It completely has we get these wonderful contrasts with Nettles that we don't see in so much fantasy. And it's not just fluff. And at the end of the day, I think it's a really, really big loss. And it is certainly kind of taking out the excitement for me personally as well, with watching the show and how I feel about the show. So I'm definitely seeing the show differently. I did tell myself that if I just kind of take myself out of that and look at the show as this is Rhaenyra's side, this is more of a perspective on the Black, since the historical account we get in Fire and Blood is supposedly more of a green perspective. So the show is an answer, to what we know and what we've read in Fire and Blood. I try to say, maybe that is what's going to keep me going and that is what's going to keep me watching, other than the action. But, just I think we lose so many great things in the impact of subversion that we know George plays with is really, really lost. So, yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Preach. Yeah, I don't know that you hit most of the things I thought, and a lot of things I wasn't much better than I ever could. Thank you, Elle. I think the thing for me that just kept hitting with this was that they really just focused on skin color with the Valyrians, and Nettles to me sort of represents like the fly in the ointment of what Targaryens say and this idea of dragon blood, and like just George wanting the world to be complex. Like he loves that stuff. He loves his lore not to fit perfectly in a box. All Targaryens are not fireproof, but Daenerys had this miracle where she was. Like that's the stuff that George prefers, and it's so interesting that he has this character who maybe has dragon blood, maybe doesn't, may have just done it through hard work, and instead we get black characters who have dark skin, but just that's there's no other questions about them because they are intermingled with Targaryens, so it doesn't do anything for that whole question of dragon blood, and kind of throw that whole thing sideways. George, I'd have to find the exact quotes, but he said some things about how he wishes he didn't make the Targaryens like blonde hair, pale skin, and purple eyes, that they could have been any specific skin color that only they had, or any specific hair color. And I think Nettles was part of the way he helped make that point later on in 2014 and 18, as opposed to when he wrote Game of Thrones in 96. So sad that that's lost, and as well as everything it does to the story.
And really, this Nettles is the perfect answer to the toxic fan base of, only this is a DEI move. They're only making me blackwashing. They're only making these black to, pander to, this woke media and woke liberal media. They just making them black when there's absolutely no reason why they have to be black. I mean, Nettles is the perfect answer to that. George's examination of all of those subversions is a perfect answer to that, to lay that to rest and let that die. But we're gonna lose that, and I think that's a shame.
I don't think I could have said any of that better or more eloquently than you guys have. Because
We're cheering for you on
like,
mute, Nettles.
yeah.
We're like, get it, get it, get it.
I know.
Yeah,
Right.
To bring some seriousness to what is essentially just a bunch of friends having fun on a podcast. These are real issues that need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed as well as the discussion we're having here. And like, obviously, we're peers amongst peers, and we all respect each other and each other's opinions. But I do want to remind anybody in our audience that this is important discussion. It's 2024, and we're still dealing with issues that we've been dealing with for hundreds of years, and it is no longer acceptable.
Agreed. And Elle,
That's the
for
kind
me,
of call
the
to
best
arms I
point.
want from my leader. Sorry, Hannah. I was just saying that
No.
the way Zander expressed that with
exactly.
such force and with such it was just beautiful. It makes me proud of this community and this podcast. That's it.
I agree, and it's something that brokers no arguments. Starter this age, like you said, Xander, it's just not acceptable. I was just typing in chat. Like, best point that Elle touched on was, the vision of divinity when Nettles rides the dragon. And whether she is a explicit, character of color, mostly black character, but it was written that way. An incredibly crucial plot point dance, like the storming of the dragon. It's domino that needs to act up to fall when it needs to fall. That's how it's written. So, yeah, like you guys were saying, insult to author. It's an insult, to us that we're too stupid to handle and keep track of yet another character. I feel like if you're watching House of the Dragon at this point and you don't know what you're in for, this isn't like a show off of a show that came 2 years ago. It's been quite a long time. If you've chosen to avoid it, or somehow missed it, sorry to you. The rest of us who have been here and are book readers, but even the non-book readers, we can keep track of another. So don't put it that way. Just whitewash over. She's an important character. Alice Rivers is important adjacent, but she's less a footnote. Alice is not.
And that's what really is also frustrating to me as well. What they're doing with Alice. And not saying that she doesn't, again, just like you mentioned, Hannah, that she doesn't have a role somewhere in there that's driving, but the time the show has spent on her, and I'm watching these scenes with her with Damon, and I'm just like, this could be done so much better. We could have done this so much better with Nettles. And it's really having that and really kind of showing that the time and effort that they've put in that in Alice Rivers, which, could have clearly, absolutely could have been done with Nettles. It's, to me, it's showing that, ultimately, Condell and the show writers and the showrunners, they don't really see Nettles as an important character. And there are, at least now, the way it looks like, overly focused on rehabilitating Rhaenyra's character and just really kind of showing her in this different light of a kind of this beleaguered, long suffering woman whose, birthright was completely, snatched away from her and showing her fight in her crusade against this. And it's cheap. I think it's really, really cheap. And again, if you would put away all those very, very important aspects of race and how we analyze race in cultures and we use fantasy for that, separating that in a way, it's just a real disservice to all the characters as a whole. And it makes everything less compelling and less impactful.
Here, here. Yes. Yes, yes. I did want to ask
Right.
a question, and maybe a slightly insensitive question, and we might have visited this season 1, but I think in context of where the pod is going now, maybe revisit it. Are the Valyrians asked as black characters, and them sort of now being the only characters in the world, even among the small folk, I'm not seeing a lot of color there. Unless Driftmark, and that speaks to Corliss being more of a lech than we thought. Is that meant to raise them up as special, or is that another case? And here's your token black character. They're all isolated and contained in one nice little family.
Right. Well, as far as I can understand, because this was a really ugly conversation before the first season even aired, as far as I'm concerned, it was trying to do representation right. I may be incorrect, but that's how I had seen it. Especially because, again, it's a fantasy series of a house that is really only relevant during this time.
Right. Well, and it
so
didn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that they're cast at all, but it's like more.
No, what I am saying is it was an opportunity for them to add diversity without realizing as the writing went on how it would impact this specific thing.
And I think that is the truth, that whenever you do make changes, there are going to be unintended consequences. And that's going to happen with any change they make. And some would argue they shouldn't make changes. And I'm not one of those people. But I mean, there are consequences all the time, and some of them are going to be messy, and that comes with the choice to make that change, which, you know, we have to remember we don't actually know why they made certain changes and why they didn't. We're only guessing, and I think it's a little dangerous sometimes to get mad over things we think they may be thinking if we don't actually know they're thinking it. But that said, I think everything that's been said here is valid, and I think that, you know, if you're going to be a writer, you do have to understand that those unintended consequences can be troublesome. Which,
Right, and if they said, and you know, like there are 2 episodes left of this season, they could say, or this could just be a giant fake out, but it doesn't diminish the substance of what we've been saying here.
right.
And I
No,
do
I
hope
agree.
that's the case, definitely. I raised that last question is, I'm just curious, like, why couldn't they have pulled like a Bridgerton? To me, it doesn't take away anything canonically from a Song of, the Game of Thrones series later. Obviously, we know there's not a lot of color there, but, you know, why could we have just seen more diversity across the board, or is it meant to sort of, um, for the viewer,
The thing is,
subconsciously up the standing of yours?
what Bridgerton did was very different because not only did they make colours black, they also rewrote English history and gave a reason why the king
Right.
fell in love with a black woman and therefore introduced black people to court. So they completely retooled the source material to justify that rather than just, oh yeah, the Valyrians just happen to be black. So what Shondaland is doing with Bridgerton is far more radical. You can argue whether successful or not, but its ambition is far more holistic. Whereas I think what's going on here was laudable, but maybe not as well thought through, or maybe thought through differently. And I really do. I mean, like, I would love to know from anyone who's listening or anyone on the Discord how diverse behind the lens is on this show. Because I don't think this is a decision that would be, I'll say it again, by a diverse writers' room. And I know there was a strike going on when this was being written. Maybe that impacted it and the voices that were able to contribute. I think David's right. It's dangerous to make presumptions, and let's see as things, I'm sure things will come out from people who were involved down the line, and maybe we can come back and reassess. From my perspective, I think we have litigated this very well, and the prosecution can rest until we know more.
Right, and then there is just the fact that you can't please everybody, because with the whole Bridgerton example, I've seen, I've listened to some YouTubers of color who said that they didn't like the change of, justifying the casting within the story. But again, sometimes you just cannot please everybody, and you can acknowledge where they're trying to come from.
Exactly.
But I don't think cutting nettles is an example of that.
All right, so as to not spoil perfectly good milk, I just want to say I respect you all, and I am incredibly proud at the discourse staying polite. But with that being said, I do think we need to move on to the rest of the episode.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and Baby Stormcloud was adorable.
Yep. Yes. Yes. Someone's getting an action figure or a plushie or something, you know? Definitely. I need some baby dragons.
And also I liked how, Baby Stormcloud's right there, but then young Aegon just has a lot of dragon figurines, and he's more interested in those than his actual
real dragon.
whom he's psychologically bonded to, right?
Well, come on, nerds love our toys. Come on.
One of us.
As I walk by hundreds of action figures.
That's got to be what he's doing when he's sulking in his chambers when he becomes king, just playing with his action figures with a morose look on his face. It's just like, this used to bring me joy.
Just like his granddad.
He orders Viserys' models rebuilt.
There you go.
Right, exactly.
Trying to fill the void. but it didn't work.
And then moving from the veil, we are on Driftmark, where Alan is shaving his head as Adam does not believe his brother will still keep up with the ruse of not being a bastard of the sea snake, even with his promotion he received. Adam laments as Corliss has always ignored him, whilst Alan believes he should stop waiting for something that will never come.
All right, so I have a scary Adam theory that I argued with some people in text about. My theory is that Adam is Laenor's son, and that there might have been a dark kind of moment of how that happened. You know, as Corliss found out about Laenor's sexuality. Given that the show doesn't really explore dragon blood riders, that would be a way to get some dragon blood into Adam, and it's one of those things I don't hope is true, but I feel like has been a little bit signaled, especially with, you know, I don't know, are we talking all of Driftmark at this point about what happens with Sea Smoke, or we're waiting?
We'll come back to the dragon part.
Okay.
I think that's a little too deep on the iceberg for this show, because
Fair.
no, just you know, I think the simplest explanation is, you know, the easiest one for the show. It's just that, you know, like, Corliss has silver hair of his own, and, you know, just the Targaryens and Velaryons had been intermarrying for, you know, at least during the Century of Blood, when there were no other you know, like, appropriate matches to be found. And, you know, like, because the mother of Aegon and his sisters was a Velaryon, whose own mother was a Targaryen. I think this is just, like, I think we can just say with the, you know, like, that, you know, maybe Adam got the dragon riding gene, whereas Alan got the silver hair. But it's kind of, or to show how it's, you know, kind of more of a crapshoot when you're not doing the brother-sister incest of the Targaryens, and, you know, like, with all the, you know, problematic aspects of magical bloodlines and stuff. But it's like, that's it just, it seems like, you know, it's like, well, Quentin technically had blood of the dragon, but they weren't interested in him.
Poor Quentin.
Oh, alas.
Rhaegal's just picky. That's all. He's just very picky.
And yeah, it's just like, in, you know, like, Alicent is saying, you know, I'm surprised those eggs hatched, when, you know, like, her, you know, like, the strong boys are as much Targaryen as her children. But it is around, you know, that kind of is the expectation, because the previous consort in the Targaryen family tree was Alyssa Velaryon, but she's clearly has some Targaryen blood herself, so.
I also don't know their mother. Like, their mother, for all we know, their mother could be, you know, a daughter of Balon the Brave or something. Like,
Right, she could
You know.
be a dragon seed herself.
Who you guys talking about? Marilda?
Who's just a random carrier, you know?
Ah, okay. Marilda. Gotcha.
And then go over at Dragonstone. Rhaenyra is looking out, almost as if she's waiting for something that will never come, when Jace appears to congratulate her and say she admires her attempt. But he also says the household is abuzz with information that she had slapped one of her counselors. Rhaenyra says she is lucky she didn't have his tongue, and believes that they are reminded through her of their mothers and daughters. Jace, however, wishes only for his mother to be his ruler. They argue about the forces they lack. When Jace brings up Daemon, Rhaenyra reacts in a way Jacaerys is very surprised by. Mystaria arrives to say their gift has been sent to King's Landing, and Jace storms off angrily.
So I'm assuming he's upset because Rhaenyra did not share this plan with him, and he feels kind of left out.
Well, and also it feels like he was kind of surprised at the reaction she has when Daemon was mentioned.
Yeah, I think Jace. I think to me, there's two really good dynamics that go on with Jace. I think the first is he realizes that his mother needs to have a nice long rule if he's going to inherit the throne. That needs to be an established and stable transition. And then I think the other thing is he is definitely starting to hit the age as an heir where he wants to contribute and be involved. And he's fighting to kind of earn that right, and I think he's probably the happiest that Daemon is away. And so anytime he sees and feels like someone else is getting his mother's ear, I think he gets a little jealous. He wants to be the one doing that. And, he has a plan backfire this go round. So, or front sea smoke fire. So I think he also probably feels like he needs to sort of make up for how that went.
Couldn't agree more on that with Jace.
I haven't been on this cast, so I'm just going to say shame on whoever put that wig on him in the first season too.
No, his Ren Fair wig was it suited him.
So I do kind of think it was sort of symbolic of, part of his first season arc was accepting who his father was. So growing his hair out to look like his father has a certain visual language to it. But it's sad that they hid away those locks for a whole season.
All right, and then after that, we find out what the gifts are, because on the shores of the Blackwater Bay, boats with the Red Dragon are floating ashore, stockpiled with food for the Smallfolk. Which, this is probably one of the shortest scenes the show has had, but actually probably one of my favorite short scenes.
Yeah, it was a great visual too. Those boats coming ashore.
Oh,
was really...
oh man, that was so cool with Dragonstone just in the back there.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, as always, we're very well filmed on this show. We can bitch about content, but I think it looks beautiful, this whole show, and that was a good example.
I guess what's hard to, or what kind of took me out of that scene was just how they made a big deal about how the gates were closed. And, logically you say, okay, even if they close the gates, they'll, maybe they'd let merchants in and out so people don't completely starve from the surrounding farms.
Could just be the morale of the city at this point.
Yeah, but at the same time, you think if things got, if people were, to the point of foraging on the seashore for clams, then that a lot of people would have just left to the villages, like Hugh Hammer was discussing with his wife. Because they're already outside of the city at that point.
Maybe a lot more people knew about Littlefinger's secret exit back then. His little ladder or whatever after the purple wedding.
Can't imagine carrying food up that.
Fair. I do think so. This scene to me is real quickly. It sort of made me think about Aemond, and someone mentioned earlier like how to get Otto back in the fold. Aemond wants to reach out to him, which I think is interesting, because it almost does sort of create a nice balance. Like you can almost see how the two of them would work well together, because Aemond is more fire and blood. He's more into sort of the war aspect of ruling, whereas he sees the value of Otto as a political player, and that Otto understands how to keep the small folk happy and the things that they need to do to successfully run a city. So I did think it was, and by the way, I think Alicent does that as well, but Aemon, doesn't want to take advice from his mother. But I think it's interesting. Even Aemon sort of recognizes that need to reach out because this is such a vulnerability for his team right now.
Right, and he
And
can't be
Rhaenyra.
everywhere at once. If he needs to go to the field as the Prince Regent, then
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, when your biggest chess piece, I mean, it's like you have your queen, but then your opponent, but you don't have any rooks and bishops, but your opponent has like rooks and bishops and no queen almost when it comes to Vagar versus, you know, the other dragons the blacks have.
And then inside the Red Keep, Alicent is watching over her son as the Grand Maester explains he sleeps 9 out of 10 hours. She doesn't have an answer to his state if he would live, and Alicent asks if there's been any word from her father, but he says no. War has broken out in the Reach as the Beesbury have struck their banners against the high towers. Alicent apologizes to her catatonic son. So really more of her almost admissions of not a failure as a mother, but a failure at what her sons have become, I guess.
this is the first step. We'll give more credit when she actually says it when he's lucid, though.
Right.
Yep.
I think also this is like something the show has done a little, you know, a spot where they put, you know, I'm going to stop and start over so you can just cut all that. This is a spot where the show, I think, has done a better job than the book did, in that it sort of shows Alicent's complex relationship with children of a system where she was pressured into seducing an older man, or you know, or sold to that man, however you want to see it in this world. You can understand where she might have resentment of how all of that went down when she was very young, and then ultimately she's probably carried some of that, and seeing outward expression of that in some ways and outward sorrow about that is really something we didn't get in the books that I can remember, and I think that's a good thing that they've added with Alicent's character.
Oh yeah,
I
this all
agree.
comes from this is all about the manifestation of her envy towards Rhaenyra for getting the happy, carefree youth that she could not have.
Let's go ahead and say it. Allison didn't get to have the chance for a whole phase like Rhaenyra. She didn't get her whole phase.
Oh,
Well, now
rip.
she's had it. She just realized that the grass is not necessarily greener on the other side, is it?
Oh, yes. That's right.
And then after she leaves Aegon, she goes into the yard and speaks with her brother, who is extremely war-weary. She asks about messages from their father, but Sir Gawain has not received any, but he hasn't sent any either. Alicent asks about her son Daeron. He is everything her elder sons are not. She does not know if it was the court or their mother that corrupted them so. Again, just we're really, both with Alicent and Daemon this episode, it's really breaking down their emotional beats, huh?
The show's drawn a lot of comparisons to them, even in season 1. So it's not really surprising, because when Viserys on Driftmark asks Daemon, you know, come to my side, brother, and, you know, we'll be together in my final days, and then Daemon says no to the thing he's always wanted. And then the next episode, Rhaenyra says, you know, just thank you for standing by Viserys and for, you know, being a dutiful wife for him, even though obviously just physically he is no one's first choice. That, you know, Alicent said, or even said, you know, early in season 1, I just wanted someone to, you know, acknowledge what I was going through when I lost my mother.
Yeah. They mentioned Daeron again. In my head canon, Daeron is gay, and that's all I want to say. I just feel like there's a lot of Targaryens, and whenever there's like a third Targaryen son that we don't get much about, he's usually gay. So we're rolling with that.
Honestly, I absolutely got that vibe during the scene, and I don't know if it's just like what you said there, or like my own, like, oh yeah, he totally is in Maiden's fantasies.
Wait, isn't also the isn't isn't the one that was supposed to marry Olenna Redwine, wasn't he also Daeron? I think he was. Maybe
He
that's
was a
why
Daron as well.
I think he
Aegon's
was.
the fifth son.
Yeah, the
I
youngest
believe.
one.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
What?
So that's
And
probably
then
why. That's probably why. Third son, Daeron.
well, I mean that works for the Blackfyres too, because Darren Blackfyre is John the Fiddler.
So Gayron confirmed.
Here for it.
Well, maybe that's why
Same.
they sent him to Old Town. You know, the sept is there, and you know,
Call them,
maybe get a
call
little bit
them
of
Mason.
religious lesson.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Not the deepest. Not the deepest of my critiques, but it's just a vibe. And then they give him like a really pretty dragon too. Like, come on.
Oh God, Blue Queen. Oh no,
Lots of
that's too on the
maesters,
nose.
septons, and sailors in Old Town. Sounds like a good time.
Oh, that is true. That's true.
So it's like the San Francisco of Westeros.
Yes.
And then once Helena leaves once Alicent leaves the yard, she goes up to meet with Helena, who is caring for her little caged crickets, I think. And she invites her to the Great Sept to light a candle for Aegon and the Lost Men. Which, were those crickets? I think they were crickets.
Yeah, they were.
I didn't notice what it was, so glad they're keeping her affection for bugs.
What does she mean? What do you means when she's like, this one doesn't sing? It's got to mean
She's
something,
talking
right?
about Alicent. I'm sure she's talking about Alicent. Because they're in that
Why?
carriage later, right? Because she's being shut out and not doing what she wants to do, right?
So you're saying like she's being silenced, and that's why Helena's saying the cricket doesn't sing.
And being in the thick of it is what makes her sing. So, and she can't do that right now.
Maybe she was talking about
I
nettles
can see that.
because she's not on the show. So she just say shit.
Let's just ask Helena. Like, what's the deal? What's gonna happen?
I'm wondering if we'll kind of see something transpire the next episode, because they could that with Blood and Cheese Son for a Son, where early in Blood and Cheese she's sewing something, and then in Son for a Son she holds it up and it's like, this is for him, and it's a burial shroud that she was already working on.
Whatever gets us more Helena, I mean. And then in the streets of King's Landing, Hugh the Hammer sees the food stalls are all empty, until suddenly a stream of small folk come running in with armfuls of food. Queen Rhaenyra thinks of the small folk even now, but Hugh does not, punching a man out and stealing his bag of desperately needed sustenance. Crispy and his company ride past, and a wide shot of thousands of small folk are seen running through the streets. Then at the steps, a Kingsguard interrupts the Queen and Dowager as they need to leave immediately. Once leaving the city, they are surrounded by small folk, all praising Rhaenyra and calling her the Queen of Fish, throwing rotten fish and offal. As the Kingsguard attempt to take the two queens to their litter, the throng of small folk closes in on them. When Helena hesitates behind, Alicent trips. The mob grows closer, the world around growing smaller. When a small folk grabs the arm of Alicent, a Kingsguard draws his blade and hacks the arm off from the queen's. She shouts to sheathe their swords, too late, as now blood has been drawn and the small folk's blood has boiled. As the two queens barely make it to the carriage, the The King's Guard, the Gold Cloaks, are all mobbed and beaten and stabbed as the litter is beckoned to the Red Keep. Alicent's arm is cut, mirroring Rhaenyra's.
I saw this as a nice, convenient way to maybe get Hugh to Dragonstone, or get him a dragon. Kind of feeling like Rhaenyra is the one, and maybe going to her since the gate is supposedly open, kind of way, and that's how we connect him.
I definitely think that, showing how the small folk are feeling right now, like we talked about earlier. Also, again, not the deepest of analysis, but I really thought the showrunners were not going to be able to resist a Dreamfire coming out of nowhere in that scenario, just to kind of create a little more of the small folk paying the price, and it being Helena's dragon like coming to rescue her, but also Dreamfire would obviously kill some people in that scenario. I really thought they weren't going to be able to resist it because it just felt very right there. The dragons, they don't seem to really be clearly like chained, like especially on Dragonstone and maybe a little more in the Dragon Pit, but they seem to be able to kind of come and go a little bit. So I just really thought that was going to happen, but it didn't, and I'm glad.
Okay, so I have made one to pick with this, and I've had it for a while, and I keep forgetting to bring it up. Am I the only one that has a problem in this sept? Because there shouldn't be like a full sept there. It should be like burned down.
Yeah, Maegor burned that. Yep.
Yeah.
Maegor
Like
burned
during
that shit
the reign of
down.
Aenys the First, and it doesn't get rebuilt again until Baelor
Until
the Blessed.
Baelor.
It's still
I
in
forgot.
ruins. Yeah, and it's
That's
been
right.
pissing me
That's
off.
right.
Like I keep forgetting to bring it up, but it's like I can't get over it, and it's so distracting.
I thought
Is it the same?
Maegor burned it right after he took the throne, like after the trial by 7. Like that's like the first thing he did after he got out of his coma.
Yeah, it was during his
What?
rule.
Burned down. It's as the Starry Sept. It gets burned down. It's this reconciliation or for them, and it's
The
Remembrance,
Sept of
yeah.
Remembrance.
I thought it
But he
got
never
burned
burned the
down at
Starry
the same
Sept.
time as the Starry Sept during the reign of Aenys the First. It's like at the end of the reign of Aenys the First.
No, Visenya was actually counseling Aenys. You have a dragon, use him against the High Septon. But that never happened. And then Maegor actually went to Old Town and got the blessing of the new High Septon. And then he actually like camped out in Old Town for several months, which is when Aegon the Uncrowned and Rhaena snuck back into King's Landing from the Westerlands and freed their dragons.
So it says here, in the face of all this, Aenys abandoned the city with his family and fled to the safety of dragons. There Visenya counseled him to take his dragons and bring blood to both Starry Sept of Remembrance. Instead, the king was incapable of making firm decisions and fell ill. Blah 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 blah. So it is like the first thing Maegor does. Yeah, you're right. Like, but it's like
It's
right
the very next
after
day after
Aenys
he's found on
dies. Yeah,
Dragonstone. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Very first thing he does.
Yeah. But it's still okay. So, but my point stands. Nothing gets fully rebuilt until Baelor the Blessed. It specifically says like where the ruins of the Scepter of Remembrance were. He ordered this new construction.
I mean, is it the same show in Game of Thrones? Because if not, I mean, it's a big city. It could have another sept.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm willing to believe that this is, like another sept in the vicinity of the castle.
There, in Game of Thrones, that is the Great Sept of Baelor, but it's built in the place that the Sept of Remembrance was on Visenya's Hill. And the only other sept that they have is there's a small one in the Red Keep.
No, in a city that big, there's got to be at least a decent sized sept instead of that's not just the Sept of Remembrance. That a visiting noble that it would be like appropriate for them to be seen in.
So the Sept of Remembrance was built on Rainey's hill, and the dragon pit afterward is what Magor commanded after he burned the Sept of Remembrance. So where's the dragon pit now in the show?
It's
Yeah, I'm not
supposed
sure
to
how
be
to
on
do
that.
that.
So there's 3 hills, right? The Red Keep's on one.
Right?
There's Visenia's Hill,
Aegon's Hill.
Rainey's Hill, and there's supposed the I thought the Dragon Pit was supposed to be on Rainey's, or maybe it is the other way around, where it's on Visenia's Hill and then the Sept is on Viset. You get what I'm saying. Sorry, I'm on like really heavy pain medication, so I'm I'm a little scrambled eggs right now. But
So the point is, they're
According to
wrong
the
and we're
lore,
right. Riot. Riot. We riot. Get the
It definitely took me out of it that the facade was not like Harrenhal, but you know, and I think it's appropriate for this podcast
or
that
at
we
least,
bring
yeah,
up
like
that nerd rage, right?
some kind of construction, like I just at least want to see like a scaffolding holding up like part of the roof line, like some kind of burn scar, because there isn't really. Yes, okay, in a city that big, you might have other churches, but would the royals be going there? And would they be that big? Like, it's not the same set piece from Croatia that they used as the Great Sept of Baelor in GOT, but so it is like arguably smaller, but it's, I don't know, it's not enough, and it, to me, it makes it seem like they're trying to say that that's the Great Sept, and it's not. And it, I don't know, it just pisses me off.
It could be a very cool storytelling piece too, because one of the major themes they're going for is the effect of, these dragons on people, and showing the people's religion and the scars of that visually could actually, even one little cutaway line could be very powerful.
That's a great point, Kevin, but also like Allison grappling with her faith, being half in, half out. The whole, she's got the 7-pointed star, and then she changes it out, and then she's got it back. And in the Bailey, in the earlier scene, she grabs at it when her brother kind of notices her eyeballing Kristen. There's a few moments where she will grab at it and touch it, and so it would kind of be nice to show the fissure in faith, and also how important this show, not first season, the Song of Ice and Fire, but like we are in this season, chastising Aegon for not learning his histories, right? And Rhaenyra is showing how important it is to pass on the histories, and this is like, a couple generations back, they should know these histories, and it would have been good visually storytelling to kind of get show watchers who are unsullied to be like, why is that sept burned? It would be sort of a meta effect of like, we got to go look it up now.
Yeah, and there truly hasn't been a lot of like the idea that this story comes out of a history of the dragons and the seven fighting, and like that it's not overt in the histories, but when you read the histories, like that's a theme that's been there. So I do think a little bit of playing to that would be cool. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be anything that like is a major point of the show or anything, but just sort of that history there would be good.
Yeah.
Look at that. We found some meaning in our sept nerdery. I love that.
Boom goes
I do
the
too.
dynamite.
But I will say for the sake of the conversation, we'll just pretend it's a different steps that doesn't exist anymore that's kind of close to the red keep.
I can't pretend. I don't live in fantasy worlds. That's not good to do as an adult.
What?
Okay.
Anyway, back to our fantasy world. So yeah, there's a food riot that starts, and it erupts outside of the steps where it attacks the two queens. Any thoughts on that? Because I like that it was I was tense for sure.
I think we got our shepherd.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Did we?
I mean, that's the first thing that I thought. Like, oh yeah,
Oh
there
yeah,
we go. There
he's
we
got to
go. We
be.
got shepherd. Yeah.
Wait, okay, again. On some pretty heavy medication. Did I miss something in this?
He got his hand chopped off, reaching for Alicent.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's pretty gnar.
Hannah right now is like the Bill and Ted's meme, like whoa.
I'm so sorry. Sorry.
No, especially since you've been on Shepherd Watch this whole season. It's
I know that's really like silly, isn't it?
no, this is like it's good that like like you see that it's good that like since you're like on the lookout for him that now we see that he's been built up now.
Yeah, it's all in front of the steps. He leaves the arm right there. Perfect.
I really feel like his character determines the dance, you know.
Look, I think he's I think that's all we're gonna get from him until Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, whenever they want to put that in the timeline of the show. But it's but like we can like they can bring that guy back or get someone who looks enough like him to carry a larger dramatic role. All I want is for them to have like when Rhaenyra takes King's Landing and when like the tyranny really starts to have like a whole line of prophets at the marketplace, like in Life of Brian, and then the shepherd is one of them, and he just gets a bigger following.
Yeah, I just feel like if it wasn't for the shepherd, I really do feel like Team Black could have won out in the dance. And there's just so much shit that could have gone down differently.
Even then, all she had to do was, just get herself to Gulltown and wait for Cregan to bail her out. But she had to go back to Dragonstone.
The timeline of the dance is so bad in my head. Did that happen before and or after Daemon and Aemond?
So,
Battle of the Gods.
So Helena takes her fall from the window, which starts the riots that lead to the storming of the Dragon Pit on the same exact day as the God's Eye. The thing is, news about the battle at the God's Eye takes a while to reach King's Landing. So the fallout from Tumbleton is the big accelerant for unrest in the city. It's just the fact that Vhagar is still out there that really it seems to set people over the edge.
Yeah, because I mean, if not for storming the Dragon Pit, then I guess we don't really know how things play out with Ulf and Hugh and all that. But you can kind of you can squint and see a world where Rhaenyra is left with Syrax, and that's really the only ridden adult dragon in the world at that point.
Yeah, and the way Syrax dies is that Syrax didn't have to.
Yeah, Joffrey.
Yeah, Syrax. Well, yeah, when Joffrey tries to ride Syrax, and then that gets Syrax over to the Dragon Pit. But what Syrax could have done was just perch on the cracked dome and then just breathe fire down. But Syrax just had to go down there and try to fight people
That's
with her
exactly
claws.
what she did. Yeah, that's exactly what she did. Yeah.
Just like Rhaenyra.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the order is like the first Tumbleton, then the storming of the Dragon Pit, and then the God's Eye and second Tumbleton.
Right.
And those are all like the major ones. Well, the major ones except for the first two that happen in 130.
Fun.
Right, because especially with Cregan, because by the time Cregan makes it down to King's Landing, he's still determined on sacking Old Town. So, like,
Yeah.
he's ready. If Rhaenyra was still alive, then there'd be no question about the war continuing.
So, you know what I noticed, and maybe this has been brought up, but one thing that kind of has been sticking in my mind is the symbolism of the high tower on there. I never really picked it up before because I just thought, oh, it's a reach thing. Their shield being the lighthouse, but it's green and gold, is so like wildfire to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what they say. They even say that when Alicent walks in with her green dress in episode 5 of season 1, right? Oh, you know, it's like Laris is telling that to Harwin for some good exposition. It's like, oh, you know what the High Tower was do when they call their banners to war? They light the beacon with wildfire.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I do remember that from the histories. I feel like the symbolism is really incredible there though, because you have Otto Hightower, you know, he served several kings, and it to me is like a scheming little climber. And you know, when you can't have actual dragon fire, what do? You manufacture your own, like MWD, and not really care what actions you take and who will get burned.
Inside the Red Keep, Aegon is still abed and is denied his medicine as Lord Clubfoot dismisses the servant and bullies him. Then he pleads and cries for him to help. Any thoughts on that?
I liked it. Like, as a parallel to Alicent, she's only coming to Aegon they're only coming to Aegon out of self-interested motives, but I mean, Laris makes sure to have Aegon's full attention, even to the point of, you know, denying him his heavy pain meds. But
Yep.
I took them.
yeah, but no, you know, like, of course, you know, like, this is Laris is, you know, a cold-blooded kinslayer, but you know, like, the best, you know, bullshit has a grain of truth in there, and you know, this has gone a long way towards, you know, just like giving depth to Laris that, you know, I think a lot of people were complaining in season 1 that he was rather one-dimensional, and so far in season 2 he hasn't had much different to work with. So it's good to see that vulnerability from him. And also seems like Lionel Strong blamed Alice Rivers. I think that's what we're supposed to take that to believe.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Especially with him getting kind of put down earlier in this episode, and then you see his reactionary responses, kind of like, oh, well, they're the king. I can still kind of angle my own whatever ambitions, I guess.
Right, and that's exactly why Aegon's in such danger.
Yeah, a manipulator and a brother who would love to kill him.
Right, and then just also, you know, just like him being somewhat or lucid sometime of the day, and you know, like, able to, you know, people are able to bring things to him to that, like that, you know, like Aemon doesn't want people undermining his authority like that.
From there, we get another nightmare of Daemon's. He finds his brother Viserys weeping over a body. Daemon finally is there to comfort his brother, but when he looks upon the corpse, it's Rhaenyra. He is awoken with news that Lord Grover Tully has passed, and it seems that Alice River even went to help him in his ailment, but there is nothing else to do. Once Sir Strong has taken his leave of Damon, he puts his head down and cries. Which again, kudos to these dream sequences this episode. They really worked.
And I do think this is a really fantastic bit of acting by Matt Smith, the range of emotions as that news washes over him and he realizes what has been done, and in 3 days time the winds will change, and there's really like a big through his facial performance and expression you can see all the pieces locking into place in his mind. And I just think that's really incredible when you can convey an inner monologue through your face it's like getting a POV chapter.
I missed that it was Rhaenyra instead of Emma, but I did, it was pretty obvious how he was, like craning his neck over after he was, like hugging Viserys to just like see, did this change? So, it's good stuff, and yeah, no, that it has become Rhaenyra makes more sense. So it can so it can fold this regret into renewed loyalty to Rhaenyra's cause.
Yeah, there's such a huge dichotomy between the ayahuasca trips we've seen so far and these, and I'm really curious whether that is choice in directors, because over these episodes it's been back and forth between two directors, and is it that these are more gentle because Damon is softening? I don't know, the one last week especially was so graphic and gratuitous and violent in a way, and these are a lot more mild, but really powerful. Him, in the throne room, and Viserys is there, and he's reliving moments from the past. Like, we've seen this scene before, right? But it's changed in the dream. He takes off the crown, and Dane runs, and he's like, "Out, let me out." So he's right there at the foot of the Iron Throne, this thing he's always wanted, and then he runs from it. They're just so powerful, but in a gentler way. And that's supposed to be a reflection of his character's heart change, mind change, or if it is from one director to another is how it changes in its timbre,
I think it is supposed to reflect him. Yeah, like you're saying, kind of lightening the load on himself, kind of giving into his grief and regret. I think the unfortunate part is the landing sticks, but it's only a 9.8 instead of a 10.0 because they just poorly intersected and did half of all these Harrenhal nightmare dream sequences.
Yeah, I wonder what the storyboarding looked like for this as opposed to the choices for the final cut of editing these sequences and chopping them into these episodes. It's like, how's that decision made? Some of them starring.
All right, and then at the second to last scene, we have Seasmoke, who has since fled Dragonmont, is seen flying over where Ellen is working. The dragon, circling like a bird of prey, seems to have his eyes on the boy, chasing him and eventually cornering him against some rocks. Which is a cool little scene. I'm just bummed that after the next scene, we find out we don't actually get to see him on the dragon.
Well, I think it's one of those they're trying to like build the mystery of who is it when they pretty much answered it. So it's kind of dumb, but I guess we'll get the scene where she finds out next week.
This might have been a bit extra, but I thought it would have been a nice touch for them to have that kind of connection that Damon had in the Dragonmont with Vermithor, with the song, not the song itself, but that eye connection that they had. It really looked like this Pacific Rim like drift thing, and I thought that would have been like a nice touch to kind of show like, oh, he's logged in, he's locked in.
No, I absolutely agree, because I thought, if we didn't get him mounting, I at least thought Sea Smoke would nuzzle him, or do that like puppy dog thing we've seen the dragons do.
Yeah, I wanted more. I love the scene, but I wanted more, truly.
I'm not remembering this of the story as far as Fire and Blood goes. And I'm looking in the world book right now. Is this canon that Sea Smoke's him out
No,
No,
rather than the other way
No.
around? Okay, that's what I thought.
but that's okay because I liked it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did think it was really interesting, and it's a skip ahead to just the already bonding sort instead of we didn't need two scenes of will they, won't they in this particular episode. So I thought that picture was fine, but I want to check if there was an elaboration in front that I was misremembering.
No, but I agree with what everybody's been saying. I think it is a good change, especially because I like the idea that they are showing that the dragons are individuals and they're not all the same.
Oh no, I was just saying that the whole thing about with Viserys saying that you really can't control them. They thought they had it in the bag, but Stefan, and they didn't until they didn't. They had it until they didn't. And then, the Smoke claims his own person, his own rider. So I thought that was a nice touch.
It's almost like the drag is answering the call to arms, like intuitively knowing
Ooh, I
that
like that.
like he
Because I
needs
could
to have a
believe that.
mount and join the battle. And it's definitely what his first wanted. Like I really got was giving Shade to smell the DNA of Lena somewhere in there, and like is seeking that out.
All right. And then to the last scene, we are at Dragonstone, where Massaria and the Queen speak on the gift sent to the King's Landing. But it seems the Queen is still unhappy in her inability to do anything. Her and Massaria speak about their mutual ex and the tribulations of their relationship. Massaria opens up about scars she has and that she will serve Rhaenyra because of the respect she's received. Rhaenyra goes to embrace her PR manager, and then things get a little
Epic.
heated. But they are cockblocked by an interruption with news that Sea Smoke has been seen flying over Spicetown with a rider. Rhaenyra then saddles up and flies out of the Dragonmont.
I don't know if cockblocked would be the right word there for Sapphic
Right.
love.
That's what I was going to say. I love David that you and I were thinking the same exact thing.
Right?
Right, but I love that it's been like no wonder Rhaenyra goes off the deep end with thinking Adam's greater when he got in the way of her kissing Massaria.
Right.
Did y'all see that coming at all?
Nope. When they were hugging, I was like, "Are they going there? Are they going there?" But
It doesn't Mushroom's account say that her and Damon entered Masari, or am I misremembering something else?
She knew about them actively sleeping with each other, and I don't recall her being a party to that. Just it was kind of an open secret, and she like gave her blessing for it.
There was definitely some action when Lena and Damon were living on Driftmark. When Rhaenyra was living on Dragonstone with her family, they didn't really put this in the books because they were like, they pretty much spent their entire marriage in Pentos in the show. But there was a time when Damon and Lena were on Driftmark, and then Rhaenyra and Laenor were on Dragonstone, and that's when they they arranged their kids' marriages and everything. And like the Strong Boys were toddlers then, so or same with Damon's girls. So during that time, Syrax produces several clutches of eggs. So it seems like there was some sexual activity going on with Rhaenyra, but
Something in the air.
whom? With whom, but like Rhaenyra was actually right in the room with Lena when she was giving birth and when she died from it. So, and Miss Arya could have been there too. Who knows?
I could have sworn that there's something in Fire and Blood about and if Mushroom's account is to be believed,
Right.
they had the menage with her.
I'm looking now, and it's in that chapter with Rhaenyra triumphant, and it's saying that she knew and gave it her blessing, but nothing specifically about them doing a menage or anything,
Oh,
according
okay.
to Mushroom.
It's
Yeah, not like
Mushroom
Magor
is
and
going to accuse
Alice.
everybody of doing that, so I'm
gonna say.
conflagrating another one of his scandalous tales. He is so the
True.
Z of the Song of Ice and Fire, right? Like,
And I love him for it. I absolutely love him for
Right.
it.
yeah, right.
I will say I definitely wasn't expecting them to start kissing. Because like at first it looks like Rhaenyra really just needed like a hug. Until it got obviously explicit.
And I mean, I'm fine
I knew that.
with it. Like,
I saw it coming.
I think including more bisexual and pansexual characters is a-okay with me. So.
Oh, same as the resident VIP, very important pansexual. I agree.
Yeah.
I think the real question now is whether they're going to use this as groundwork to get Rhaenyra and Alicent to kiss for when they reunite in King's Landing.
Hey.
When Alicent's in those golden handcuffs.
Now kiss.
Yeah.
Right.
Which maybe we should. We're here. We did, and I'm gonna do this for now. If you join the Discord, which I greatly encourage you to do if you haven't already, all are welcome. To have a chat called House of the Dragon Polls, and week's poll was Saria's interest in Rhaenyra sincere or calculated? And we had 9 unbroken heart emojis that said sincere. We had 4 broken heart emojis for calculated, and 1 covering the eyes, but like one out looking. I don't want to see emoji, which was that kind.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Not that I don't see them, but I'm like, I'm afraid for Rhaenyra getting.
No, I will say, because I kind of purposely did this because I wanted to make this joke with Bina, but for this, because I did this last week too, I think. Is her interest in Rhaenyra sincere or calculated? I picked both because it's sincerely calculated.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
I think that
But is
tracks.
that what the show is trying to do? You know, we know that they're departing in characters in their arc. I agree with Bina what said about it. It gives Shay the funny war in a lot of ways. Which, you know, can you blame her? Also, she's pretty straightforward about who and what she is. So choosing to engage with her is a risk taking. And my vote, that's calculated risk on Rhaenyra's part. I don't think she's naive to the fact that at any moment, sorry, turn on her. But I don't think the show is necessarily trying to do that. They're going to put it all on, you know, the song and you know, who is it? Harwin Hole or whatever.
Hugh
I
Hammer.
forget their names because
Hugh
they're
the
not
Hammer.
important enough to me.
Hugh the Hammer and
Yeah,
Oath.
Hugh the Hammer and Oath the White. I feel like they'll build that betrayal up more than anything with Masari. Like they are making her a little more sincere, but I could be wrong.
No, I agree with was it Cole Wadegi who just says, you know, like or had the put out the idea of the storming of the dragon pit being at least abetted by a deliberate intelligence gap after it's gone sour with Mysaria.
Yeah, and this would definitely support that idea.
Mm-hmm. Right. It would make more sense if that's what they're going for it to be genuine at first. But that said, I think that Mysaria's speech was rather cheesy and didn't, or it seemed more sycophantic. So
Yeah, there's a reason I didn't put it in my summary.
Yeah, that's to hear too, just because I mean she's obviously got a lot of trauma and has been used. I feel like she's Aries, the spider, like in her role where she's not trying just to all down, take vengeance on, you know, the system that left her broken and trafficked. But she's also not, you know, necessarily trying to propagate that system either. Like if there are casualties, so be. I think kind of is more. We could get an inner monologue or epilogue. I feel like even in the books that would be painting her a little more accurately. That notion of, you know, I'm not here for just utter chaos, but if there are no casualties among the nobility, like, sorry, kind of, if that makes sense.
no, I think that's
Yeah, me too. It does. Because with Varys, it was more like I serve the realm kind of thing. And if that means I leave a couple bodies behind in benefit of serving the realm, then that's okay. And I guess you can somewhat invert that with Matharia as far as the small folk go, because she talks a lot about the people. So I guess, that actually would kind of like patch through and kind of align with that in some kind of a way. Yeah.
No, I agree in terms of Mysaria, especially because she is very apparently or transparently, I guess, for the small folk. Especially being featured so prominently in an episode named The Small Folk.
Right.
But I also do love, because maybe it was her kissing Mysaria that spurned Rhaenyra, like, no, I don't call my council. I'm going to throw my armor on. I'm going to hop on the dragon. I'm going to go see who the hell is on Sea Smoke.
no, that she's feeling some of her dragon blood.
It kind of puts her on more equal footing too, doesn't it?
Yeah, a bit. Like you can do it, I can
Like
do
they're
it
gonna
too,
meet in
kind
the
of thing,
middle,
you mean?
you know?
Mm.
I just like that they came together out of their mutual respect for each other and what they've been through. I like that it's not just like a heat of the passion kind of a thing. It comes out of respect, which I really liked.
Yeah, I did. I caught that too, David, and I thought it's not just action. There was meaning behind it and
Right.
purpose behind it. And that is one
Right.
thing that I think
Absolutely.
this series, opposed to the other, has moved forward in representation with, and I do like that.
Yeah, because I mean,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
both women who've been disrespected by the system and made at times powerless, and and they share that trauma and that like disrespect, and the fact that they get it from each other is really nice, and that is a good building block for a relationship.
Correct.
How far it's going to go, we'll see, but
Yeah, not just
on the show at least.
on Drystone, and there are no other. And I need to.
Right.
And it also shows
Or
growth
just
in
passion
Rhaenyra
or whatever.
post Kristen Cole.
Even, you could say that Harwin was clearly more into her than she was into him, from what little we got of them.
All right, so I think that is a perfect time for any last thoughts, prediction, hopes, wants. I'm sure I can get a few.
I'm sorry, I came in swinging when I got on here, so I didn't get to give my lemon
No,
cake.
I love it.
I hear
Oh,
I give
go.
it 3 for lemon cakes.
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
I think we were
that's
all
about right.
within 3 to 4. Yeah.
Mine was like, parts were like 4.7, 4.8. Parts were 2.5, so it averaged out to like a 3. There were really, really great moments, but filler episode can only go so high in ratings, really. But yeah, Elle, you should always come on here swinging.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I thought 3 was, appropriate, like a star for Sea Smoke, a star for Adam, and a star for Rhaenyra at the end.
Yep. Here.
And a star for Little Wee Kitten is Dragon, playing on the floor.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Give him a
Yes.
special star. So cute.
I'm
so
wondering
sweet.
if they already have like the toys ready for that for the baby dragon.
Fuck a
Oh
toy.
my
Give me the
god,
real
I
one.
so want to be. Yeah, I want to be like, plushy dragon.
Right, exactly. It would look really good under my Cyrax on the shelf.
Okay. So with that, thank you all for being here today. And if you'd like to join the conversation, you can find us on the Best of the Kingsgrade Discord. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Marketplace, Google Maps.
WordPress.
Thank you all to my counselors for joining me. And
Grinder.
again, we will see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, Zander.
Look for
Thank you so
VOK
much
podcast.
for taking
Bye,
up the mantle
everyone.
and hosting all these too.
Yep,
Bye, Elle.
exactly.
Love you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. See y'all next week. Love you guys too.
Hope you feel better, Hannah. Love y'all.
And then going from the Vale, we are now at shit. Hold on. What? Oh my God! What is the island called? Dressmark. Thank you. Sorry.
What I would really like is some sort of like dragon seed, mount your own dragon VR game. That would be sick.
There you go.
Or like,
And then you
Tour of
don't know.
King's
It could
Landing
go
or
either way.
something.
Like it could. How about it could burn you, or it could, or you can ride it.
Yeah, yeah, that would be so cool. The Oculus one, it's loaded on Oculus, or at least it was on my preloaded app, where you can tour the Anfield. And it was real because I don't think I'll be able to afford to actually go there. But you really do get like the sense of the confinement and stuff, and tour, and they have a couple other ones that you can, like, I think there's one for the Louvre you can virtually tour.
Neat.
And it would be really cool to get like a Song of Ice and Fire sort of tour of Westeros VR. Like you could go to the Wall, you could go to
Go with the small
Old Town,
folk.
you could explore the Red
Go
Keep.
with the small
Yeah, it
folk.
would be sick.
Have a bowl of brown. I've been to the Anne Frank house. It is very. I've been to the Anne Frank house. It is very confining, but you do feel it.
Yeah, even in the VR tour, you can really like. It's hard to even like turn around in places like they have, if you point at something, it will tell you like, and this know that they would look out of, and
Mhm.
this is where they'd go, and this happened, and this is who slept where and stuff. It was really really
Although
powerful,
I'm
even
sure the tour doesn't
spiritually.
have. I'm sure the tour doesn't have the hour-long line out front first to get in.
Yeah, and you're all by yourself, and you can really take your time looking at things
Right. Which
and letting it
you'll never
impact
actually
you.
get to do. Right. In real
Yeah,
life, that'll never
it
happen.
really, yeah,
It's a
it's a
total
really good
tourist
tour. I
trap, but
recommend it. If you if, if you ever get to get a VR or you have your own, I really do recommend it. It's really impactful and very very done.